All right, guys. So a little backstory, just to in case we're meeting for the first time today. My name's Cliff Duren. I'm the worship pastor at First Baptist Woodstock, which is north of Atlanta. We uh, are a We have two different style services. More than style, they're just different setups, therefore different feels. So the service I lead is with a choir and orchestra with a rhythm section driven orchestra. So a lot of what I'll say today is our practices I utilize every week. We also have a service with just a band um, and a few singers. So the look is different. It's led by a different worship leader. It's its own thing, and so even some of their processes are a little different than ours. We might talk through some of those as well. So I've been here for 2 years. Before that, I served at a church in Nashville, Tennessee, for 8.5 years. A church with 8 campuses, so I served in a few different roles there. Sometimes with full choir and orchestra, sometimes with just a band, and then I've done a fair amount of arranging and orchestrating for various publishers. And obviously, in those contexts, I have recorded and played on many tracking sessions with rhythm sections. And so I love band led worship and believe even in a more traditional setting or even in an orchestra setting, you can still utilize a worship band and utilize gifted band members in your church to really make an impact on the service. Um, so I hope you'll feel that same way, and maybe some of these practices will be helpful to you. Maybe you're implementing a band for the first time, or just wanting to improve your current state. Hopefully, some of these sound check techniques will be helpful to you. So we're going to jump right in. Again, your handout is a um, just line by line what we're going to address this morning. So hold on to that, and if you I'm gonna go ahead before I forget to do it and put my email address on here. If you um, are unable to attend any of the other band breakouts and would like to receive any notes from those, I'm happy to send those to you. And you can just shoot me an email at cliff.duren@fbcw.net, and we'll connect from there. So a few more folks jumping on. Great to see you guys again. If you're willing, I'd love to know who you are and where you're from, where you're listening in from this morning. Always just good to know who is on the other side of the screen. So, um, all right. So we're talking about really the importance of what your band is hearing. So we're going to talk about monitors, and we're going to talk about how to even get to a place where everyone can hear well, and what they need to be hearing. We get real specific with that. So let's start with a sound check, and really what we're going to talk about applies to band and um, your worship team, your vocals. So a lot of these practices can apply. It's more about how to pastorally handle a morning and how I approach um, the Sunday morning gathering, or anytime you're gathering, like what our practices are here at First Woodstock, and at other churches I've served at in the past. So I believe how you handle a sound check. Um, Good morning, Aaron, coming in from Griffin, Georgia, First Baptist Griffin. It's awesome. Um, I believe how you handle a sound check really sets the tone for the rest of the day. So I don't think of it as this like separate, disconnected time that's removed from the rest of the day. I really feel like I'm there, hopefully showing up with a heart prepared to worship. I'm hoping and praying that for the rest of the team there as well, not just the people who are going to be leading worship, but I'm praying for that for our media team, for the guy who's going to run sound, for the person doing the lyrics. Like, hopefully, we're showing up to sound check with a mindset of worship and with a mindset of, hey, this is our run through, before we encourage people to engage with God. Like, I think we often go sound check, okay, technical only, let's focus on tech. And, you know, from a technical aspect, that is definitely the design. But how we handle those moments, how we address one another, how we address challenges, all of that plays into the rest of the day, into the worship experience. So be the same person, be the same prepared, heart prepared worship leader and sound check that you're going to be in the worship service. So, how can we do that? Well, a few things. First of all, plan your sound checks like you would plan a choir rehearsal, like you would plan an orchestra rehearsal. In some ways, like you plan a worship service. Like, how do I want to maximize? I know what my sound check time is. How do I want to maximize that time, to get done what I need to get done, but to do it in a non-stressful way? What do I need to do ahead of time, to make sure that the sound check is not stressful? So plan those like you would a rehearsal, know what needs to be done, and come up with a plan to pull it off in the allotted amount of time. So, I mean, that may even be as detailed as like another printed worship order kind of vibe that walks you through, what your sound check needs to look like. We're pretty documented here at First Woodstock, through Planning Center. We don't. Our process is for a 9:30 service. Our band call time is 7:45. So that call time is for them to come in before any vocalists come in and to get their ear monitor mixes adjusted and to get set up to tune their instruments. Like, all those things happen before the official sound check begins. So I mean, that's an hour and 45 minutes before we're even going to start the service. So I know in every church that is, dependent on so many things. You may have a Sunday school class in your sanctuary. You may have conflicts that don't allow you to um, be there that early. You may have an 8 a.m. service that you don't want to get there at, 6 o'clock for. So there's a lot of variables. I'm just walking you through what it looks like for our team and how we address these things. So work with your sound and media tech ahead of time, to make sure everything is ready before your band and singers arrive. I cannot stress how important this is. Um, the biggest way to wreck a sound check is for there not to be a solid plan between you and whoever your tech director is. That person may be on staff or they may be a volunteer. No matter the case, that needs to be like one of your most important relationships on your staff, is your relationship with your media tech, whatever you call that person. I'll just use the word media tech this morning, uh, as a general term, and that's how you know what I'm talking about. And that includes the guy or gal running sound, whoever's going to run lyrics. Like, those people need to be in the know way before Sunday. So always plan ahead, over communicate to them, give them as many details as you can. Good morning, Janet. Janet's here with us from Lansdale, PA. Thanks so much. I know you were here with us yesterday too, so it's good to see you back. Thanks for coming back. Um, so working ahead of time, you don't want your band to come in and somebody say, "Oh, I didn't know we were having electric guitar today," or "I didn't know the worship leader was also playing acoustic guitar, and then for nothing to be set up for them, for no direct boxes to be in place, or cables to be run where they're just ready to go. So our stage is we meet on Tuesdays to walk through what Sunday's going to look like. And then even just this morning before this breakout session, I met again with a smaller group just to make sure everything's good to go. Have we missed anything? Is there any specific details that we haven't worked through in the worship order? So those meetings or those phone calls, if you're dealing with volunteers, are well worth your time to make sure everything's ready before any volunteer shows up on Sunday morning. Here's another thing that can really help with the stress of a sound check is for your audio guy or gal who's running front of house, for them to have a microphone. It's going to keep, for most churches, they're in the back of the room, you're on stage and trying to communicate, even if things are going great, and even if all the like no phrase said is challenging, just yelling back and forth at each other, the sound guy from the back of the room with no microphone, it's just not a great it's not a great way. Like, things can get out of control, or even tense really quick, especially like if they're trying to talk over a drummer playing or over somebody tuning their guitar. Then there can be frustration there. So give them a microphone. Make sure they have one that is coming into the monitors, either if you're wearing inner ears, or if you're using wedges on the floor. Make sure your sound guy has a microphone that he can turn on and off. He just needs it on when he needs to talk. You don't want to hear everything he's saying, when he's not addressing you. But a mic with a switch that he can turn on and off will be a game changer for the tone of the rehearsal. Secondly, and I mentioned this, so this is how we do. If possible, have your band come before the vocalist. More cables can sometimes mean more problems, so it's good to have time to make sure all of the instruments are good to go. And there's just more tech needs involved with a band, so you want to be sure that they have a few extra minutes of a head start before you add vocals into the mix. So for us, again, our band comes at 7:45 to set up. Our vocals join at 8 o'clock. So there's that little window of time where we can get all those kinds of things addressed. Once you have your entire team there for sound check, so this is media, vocals, and band, stop everything. And sometimes it even feels a little awkward, but stop everything and pray for your morning. I always intentionally wait until everybody's there who's a part of the sound check. And as soon as we're all together, I stop. I might even read something. I might read a passage of scripture that I just read that morning in my quiet time, or something I read that week that made me think of our service or our opportunity to worship that day. And then I will pray for our morning and let that be the real tone setter for the day. So sometimes I'm having to say, hey, I know everybody's still tuning up. Let's hold off on playing for a minute. I just want to pray for our day. It is worth that to get everybody aligned, to get all of us on the same mission. So take that time to pray for sure. Budget enough time to run your entire worship set with transitions. So really treat it, once you get level set and everything, we usually have just one song. It's usually like whatever the most unfamiliar song is for the day, or the newest song. We'll usually sound check with that one, like check our monitor levels. We're making sure everything works, and we're also rehearsing, getting one more run through that new song before we start the actual run through of the worship set. So make sure, we even run our imitation songs, and some of those are songs we've done tons of times, but we just want to make sure everybody's in the know. I don't know how your church is. We're thank the Lord, adding people to the ministry. So there may be a drummer who's never played that song before, or maybe an alto on the worship team who's brand new and has never sung before. So I don't want to leave any stone unturned. I want to run through everything in the sound check, and you'll find that that's super helpful. And also include those transitions. So if your set is, you know, Glorious Day, Living Hope, and Cornerstone, well, don't run Glorious Day and then stop and go, okay, everything good. Once you start the run through, like, time out those transitions, finish Glorious Day, say at least a similar version of what you're going to say in transition, if there is a transition. If we use a lot of scripture at First Woodstock. If there's a verse that's going to be read or a verse that's going to be on the screen there, we make sure that that happens, just so everybody seen it for the first time in the worship service. Um, so transitions matter, and those endings are sometimes the hardest thing about the song. So don't just start a song and not finish it. Write it out, if unless you're just on a major time crunch. But hopefully you've got enough time in your sound check, to run a 20-25 minute set, Lord willing. So um, if your sound check is your rehearsal, let's say everybody's not coming together until Sunday morning, which is the case in so many places. Maybe everybody's rehearsed separately and we're finally all together on Sunday morning, then make sure there's enough time for, like, in case there's a little bump in the road or a miscommunication has happened in some area. Make sure you allow plenty of time there. Once you add vocals, we talked about this already, run one song before you start your run through. And that'll be an addition, to the band members and to their mixes. And then that'll be, getting a time to get the vocals, their levels set as well. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is super important. So when you do that first song, everybody's monitors may not be in great shape. The mix may not be in great shape. So, but you need to encourage your singers and your instrumentalists to play and sing as if they can hear really well. The reason for that is, if they can't hear really well, and they half sing their way through that first song, or kind of am off mic, or they're not singing so they can see what they can hear, well, then nobody's getting a true idea of what the sound check feels like, of what their monitor mix should feel like. Everybody needs to be all in, even if it sounds bad, even if your ear monitors sound bad or the monitor wedge in front of you sounds bad. Sing like you're going to sing during the worship service. And that's the only way to get appropriate levels set for the day. So don't miss that opportunity. Super important. Um, and you'll want to, and that's a weekly reminder for our team. I say it every week. They've got to be sick of me saying it, but I always say, hey, we're about to sound check the first song. Don't forget, sing like your mix is amazing. I just kind of always make a joke about it, no matter the case. And everybody, it reminds them to really jump in and sing. Okay, so we want to talk about monitor mixes, and this is really the kind of the in the summary of the breakout, a big focus there. If your band and singers can't hear, then if they can't hear the right things, they may not play or sing the right things. So it's super important to be sure that monitor mixes are ideal. Excuse me. So sorry. So I'm talking about two different scenarios here. Some of you may only have wedges on your stage for monitors. Some of you may have in-ear monitors, and so both can work fine. There's value in both. There's advantages to both. So don't think you don't have what you need. If you don't have in-ear monitors, you can make it work with wedges. Obviously, the advantages of having in-ear monitors are you really cut down on the stage noise. You don't have all these speakers everywhere, um, and that impacts the front of house mix. And so it's a lot for your sound man to navigate. So, um, if for no other reason, having inner ear monitors is super helpful in cutting down so much of the stage noise. And then maybe all you need is, your choir to have a speaker, uh, coming from, up top down to where they can hear, or right in front of them where they can hear, depending on what your setup is. And then that could be the only speaker on stage that's not, facing out to the congregation. So there's definitely some advantages from that aspect. Obviously, if you're wearing, inner monitors, you may feel a little disconnected from the congregation. That's the biggest downside. Um, to wearing wearing earbuds, wearing in-ear monitors, but it does just take some getting used to, and you'll find that it's super helpful, to have what you need in your ears. Keeps you from over singing. And there are also, if you get further down the road, there's some ways you could have room mics where you can hear the room in your ears, to where you feel like, you're still as connected as you want to be. So a few things to think through there. So let's talk about monitor mixes for the band. Monitor mixes for the band. If the band is going to play well together, then they need to be able to hear each other. I cannot stress how important this is. Think of it this way: if your pianist can't hear your guitar player, well, if you're leading worship songs or even hymn arrangements, it may be that the piano is not the driver of every song. Maybe the guitar is on a song, or maybe there's a guitar lead line. Well, if your pianist can't hear that other instrument, that other main tonal instrument, they're gonna just instinctively play through every section of the song the same. They're gonna dig in. They're gonna, blaze through sections where it may be that that's the guitar's time to really, carry the way. But if they can't hear that person to know that, they don't know if that's happening or not. I'm telling you, they're just going to blaze through. The same is true for your guitar player. They need to hear piano. They need to hear the other instruments to know how they fit into the big picture of each song. So, if you're all on in-ear monitors, that is an easy fix. They need their instrument a little louder than everything else, but they um, definitely need to hear all of the other instruments in order to make sure they're a part of the team and not just a rogue musician doing their own thing. So if the band is playing to click, everybody needs plenty of click. That should be really matched with the level of your instrument so that you all stay together. If you have questions about that or want more definitions on that, and we're not at one of the sessions yesterday, let me know and I'll send you those handouts that tell you more about um, verbiage like click and stems and playing with things like that. If that's a foreign world to you, I'd be happy to send that to you. If you're playing with just wedge monitors, hopefully you've got some freedom to give like your singers a different mix than your band. And it may be that if you're sharing mixes, you just have to find the scenario that everybody can agree on. But I cannot tell you enough how important it is for your band to be able to hear one another. It would be the equivalent of a basketball team trying to play together without being able to see each other. That's how important the band hearing each other is for a successful musical experience. Any questions so far? I've kind of been talking a whole lot. Um, any questions on even just the flow of sound check? I meant to ask that before I jumped into monitor mixes. Go ahead and fire those into the chat room if you have any, and I'll give you just a second while I drink some coffee. Okay, no questions. We're going to keep plowing. Obviously, at any point, if you have questions, go ahead and drop them down there. I'd be happy to answer those along the way. And we'll give you time at the end as well. All right, so um, whatever the scenario, make sure your band can hear. Um, all right, a few things. Maybe you're on the fence about playing with a click track. Let me just give you a few notes on that. It will revolutionize the way your band plays together. So just know having a metronome, having that steady beat, knowing where the downbeat is, especially if there are sightline issues like everybody can't see everybody else, or you know, your drummer's music is over here, but the worship leader's over here. Like just having something that's consistent is super, super helpful. So I'm a huge fan of it. Um, no one has to guess where the downbeat is, no matter where you're positioned on stage, all those things. Also, a lot of people, they just don't even know where to start with trying to implement that. You don't have to have an elaborate setup to let's say you don't have any in-ear monitors, you're just using wedges on the stage. Well, even just your drummer having a click, like they could have a metronome app and they could just have an ear, one of their ears plugged in, hearing the click, or both. Um, and they could be the tone setter. They could be the groove setter for the service. They could count off the songs, things like that. So that could be super super helpful to get somebody on click. So um, you can obviously if you start to add other things, maybe pads stem, or something else that's tracked ahead of time. Everybody would need to get involved in being able to hear, but just so you know, there's some options there. Um, got a question here from James. Sometimes a click prevents the natural ebb and flow of the music. If you need to slow down or speed up, it might take away some of the natural sound of the music. Have you dealt with that, and how do you still allow for spirit moment with the rigidity of the click? James, that's a great question. James, my neighbor down the road in Carrollton, Georgia. Um, it's a great question, James. So, um, there are moments in our services, sometimes planned and sometimes not, where um, if I'm leading from piano, or relying on a pianist, I may say, "Hey, let's sing this to the Lord." It may be a new chorus, that wasn't in the worship order, but something familiar, or it may be repeating a chorus that we've just sung. So those, yes, we definitely, provide margin. Every click is separated song by song, so it's not like once the service starts, we can't alter anything, we can't stop anything. But as far as the ebb and flow of the music, even if a song like has a big retard in the middle, all those things are clicked out for us. So all that is set. Or if I prefer a song to be a little slower than maybe the original version or the demo, we'll set all those things ahead of time. So that's just as far as the ebb and flow of things. Obviously it creates the need to really plan ahead, to really think through those things ahead of time before Sunday morning. But I have found that the ability to keep everybody together and to keep the click allows our worship band to play with such confidence, because they don't have to wonder where the downbeat is. And so those things are far more valuable to me in improving the overall performance of a song, than thinking that I might want to slow down here, or I might want to speed up. I make all those decisions ahead of time, and we make sure that the click reflects those. So it is a little back and forth. And honestly, um, it's a transition if you're coming from a tradition of, you know, um, following the conductor, I don't conduct the congregation when they sing, so that's part of it as well. So I don't necessarily need that ebb and flow ability with them. Every sometimes we may, depending on what the choir anthem is, if it's with just piano or just piano and orchestra, no rhythm section, then that's a good opportunity to not use click, and then you can really stretch phrases as much as you want to, things like that. So there's definitely some ways to be flexible, even in the context of using a click. But that's a great question. Um, all right, moving right along, regarding vocals and what they you want to make sure that your band can hear the people singing, can hear your worship team, especially the ones who are worship leaders. So um, it's pretty common in our worship sets at First Woodstock to have more than just me leading a song. I'll often have a female worship leader or another guy on our team lead a song. And so, a few things. One, our sound tech, they know who is leading what, so they know who needs to be a little louder. They know to anticipate that and to have that mic ready, so it's not, oh, this person now let me sound like a mistake at that point. So I'm very detailed in who's leading what, but your band needs to be able to hear all leading, so that they need to hear the same instructions or the same leadership that the congregation does. In case, like James, and the person leading to know that that's a disaster waiting to happen. You got to be super careful with that and make sure that that they can hear, everybody leading, probably a low of the whole team, just so they get a little more context of the song. It'll be super helpful for them. Um, Real quick, I know it's a worship band lab, and so, but I do, while we're talking about monitor mixes, want to talk about what vocals need. If you're all sharing a wedge mix, obviously there's a lot of give and take to that. You got to be a team player. Your vocal may not be as loud as you want it to be. So definitely like have your heart prepared for those scenarios to be sure you got a good mindset, and you're willing to share. But you definitely need your vocal level where you're not having to push, where you're not having to over sing, especially if you have multiple services. That can be so taxing on the voice. So you want to be really careful with that. Excuse me. It's too early here, guys, or I didn't sleep enough. But the if your vocals happen to be wearing in-ear monitors and have their own mixes, here's a few practices I give our team. Um, don't just have your vocal. Obviously, you want to blend with the rest of the singers. So similar to the band, you want your vocal to be a little above the rest of the team, just so you want to be comfortable, but you don't want your vocal to be too loud because it changes the way you sing. It changes. You're going to be, if you're scared of your own voice, you're going to be really inhibited. You're not going to want to sing full voice in the moments where you need to be. So a lot of people are like, "Hey, crank up my vocal as loud as you can." Well, that's not ideal, and it's not going to help you. So, plus, you need like tonal instruments. So for my mix as a vocalist, I want my vocal, and then I want the rest of the vocals right here. So I still feel like I'm a part of it. I'm still able to blend with the group. But I want a tonal instrument, piano, guitar, or maybe a little bit of both. I want that pretty close to that other vocal level. That helps obviously with tuning, intonation, pitch. And so super important. Also, in a vocal mix, you really want something rhythmic. So if I'm on in ears, even as a vocalist, I still have click in my ear to keep me in the pocket, to keep me um, not behind the beat, not rushing ahead. So having that click is super important. Um, I usually don't have a lot of drums in my ear because I can hear them in the room and I've got click going. So hearing drums in the room matched with a click in my ear is a good mix for me. You don't want to fill your mix with so much stuff that none of it's distinguishable. So put the things in your ears that help you. We have a big band. We have three different guitars. We have a B3 player. Like I just there's not room in my mix for everything, and for me to really have what I need to vocally execute that service well. So just know you can get things really busy, really quick, and you want to be careful with that. So um, I think that's all I wanted to tell you. Yeah, so less is more with vocal monitor mixes. Just know that. Any questions on monitor mixes, even if it's different than what we've talked about? Maybe you came to this breakout with a specific question. Fire those away, and then we can talk about those before we wrap up here. Any questions? Okay. Well, if you think of any, feel free to fire those in. Here's one from Aaron. Um, our media sound team is almost 100% made up of volunteers with varying levels of expertise in sound engineering. Advice on how to train these individuals. Aaron, that's a great question, and that's very common. To be in that situation. So I find that so many issues that are media related are more just communication before the actual service. So set up a schedule with your volunteers if they're supposed to be there that Sunday um, in a certain seat on your media team. Coordinate with them all through the week. Really communicate transitions, walk through. I mean, our we send our media team like specific notes, song by song, of what we're going to like. Hey, there's a scripture that's going to be read over the introduction of "How Great Thou Art," or there's I'm going to read over an instrumental section of a song. I'm going to share a scripture, uh, talk through transitions. Like there's a guitar solo right after the second chorus in "Everlasting God." I just want you to know that that's coming because your sound man. I mean that solo needs to come up some, and then it needs to go back down when the solo's over. So, being real specific with your details, because I think half the battle usually with media is just not being prepared or maybe not having all the information they need. So if I give them the tools where they can listen to the songs on Planning Center, they can prepare ahead of time. That's going to be half the battle. So much of it is just being familiar with the music. If somebody is running lyrics or audio for us on Sunday, the expectation is that they've listened through the songs, just like I expect the choir and our orchestra and band to listen through the songs as well. So I want them to be so familiar. We talked about this yesterday, and Aaron, you may have not been in this session, but we talked about um, listening through a song one time, gets it into your head, or maybe as an instrumentalist into your hands, but multiple listens through a song really get the song in your heart. So just like the people leading those songs, I think it's important for the person facilitating lyrics and helping our congregation to hear those songs that they are also that familiar with the music and with the songs being played. So as far as training for them, technical training, there are lots of consultants you could bring in, and at a reasonable cost too. This is not as expensive as you might think it would be, but it's highly valuable, especially with a 100% volunteer. There may not be a um, distinguished, or there may not be a go-to expert among those volunteers. Sometimes there is. Sometimes, depending on what somebody's background is, they really bring, the caliber of a full-time media person. But if not, um, feel free to email me. I'll send you some contacts for some different places, even in Georgia, so you wouldn't have a lot of travel cost involved. But yes, I think trainings for media are super important. But a lot of times, just preparing them really well is half the battle for sure. Great question, though. Great question. Anybody else? All right. While you're thinking, we just got a couple of minutes left here. Um, I mentioned a minute ago, adding a click track, and then let's talk just for a second about stems and multi tracks. Um, and there's a lot of debate about whether these are helpful or worth it. And I'll just kind of share with you what our thoughts are. Um, Thanks, Aaron. I'm glad that that's helpful. It's always so hard to know when I can't see you guys to see your response. So I appreciate you saying that, and happy again to send you more details or consultant ideas of some great folks. So a lot of people, a mindset with using stems or multi-tracks would be, I'm cheating. I'm not, we're not really playing some of the things that people are hearing. Is that misleading? Um, Not if it's used correctly. So I'm going to walk through this handout, and we'll talk through if you're on the fence or just thinking about adding that. Here's some practices that might help. So first of all, it's kind of an all or nothing scenario. Like you wouldn't want to use stems or multi tracks on one song and then have nothing on the next song unless it's like a real unplugged kind of moment. But you wouldn't want to do like a band driven song with stems followed by a band driven song without stems, or without click. Like the back and forth would be more extreme than you want for like a cohesive, um, sonically pleasing worship set. So just know it's definitely a commitment once you go there, but well worth it. So um, as far as what I mean when I say stems or multi tracks, really it just helps provide you with maybe things you don't have instrumentally. So maybe you don't have somebody playing pads or synth. Um, well, if you have multi tracks, you can have those and utilize those to help fill some of the sound um, to make the song feel better. Maybe in a lot of worship songs, there may be four or five, even more guitar parts, and you may not have that many guitar players, or you may not have that many inputs to use that many, but you like the layers that are provided. Well, establish what your guitar players or player is doing on a song, and then fill in with the rest of the guitar tracks, just to fill out the song and make it feel more like the original version. Um, you gotta have an in-ear monitor system in place before you can add something like this. So you can't use multi-tracks just with wedge monitors, because there has to be a click at that point. You can't, you know, um, just hope that you're staying with them or anything like that. It's not gonna go well. It's not gonna be pretty for sure. Um, and you also must have the right software to run multi-tracks or stems. So running a click, again, you can just use an app on your phone, a metronome, plug in a headphone jack, and you're good to go. But for stems, there will be a little more elaborate setup needed. Software like Logic, a DP is Digital Performer. That's what we use in one of our services. Another service we have uses Ableton. and that's kind of the go-to for live track running. Cubase is another one. So lots of programs out there, and no matter which one you use, like a company like Multitracks, or if you're buying stems from a choral publisher, all of those softwares can utilize the stems or multi-track. So it's not that one company only uses one software or anything like that. Let's see. Your sound tech has to know what to do with stems. So again, Aaron, this goes back to training. Like, if they're like, "Oh, I've got multi tracks," and they, crank up something that's also being played on stage, um, you know, that's not what you want. You need to make sure they know how to layer in. Stems and multi tracks are designed to complement what's happening live. They're not meant to um, take over or replace one of your volunteers. And that's something I'll say to my volunteers. Like, we're not hiding the fact that we'll have, a click track, or even on some songs a vocal stem. For us in our room, it adds some clarity to the lyrics to have a little bit of a vocal stem in there, because the choir is so far away from the choir mics. So things like that. There are technical reasons, definitely, where stems can be helpful. Don't feel obligated to use every stem. So, for example, like, you can use string and percussion stems, and people don't think, "Oh, I don't see a violin up there," because it could be a keyboard doing it or whatever. But you don't want to use like brass stems when there's not a brass section on your stage, or at least one brass player, things like that can be a dead giveaway that there's a lot of stuff coming through the track. So don't feel bound to use the whole package when you buy it, for sure. That's like a super quick um, STEM philosophy. Ears and what you're hearing, what you're using. So that's really all the content I have today, which is good since we only have 2 minutes left. Any final questions in our 2 minutes remaining? Okay. Hey, if there's no other questions, thanks for tuning in today. Again, my email address is in the chat room along with the handout. Feel free to connect if there's anything I can do for you, any way that I can be helpful. It'd be my joy to do that. And God bless you guys and your ministries. And we'll hopefully see you soon, maybe in person next time. Thanks so much.